My daughter disappeared 18 years ago. Her coat was found on the bank of the Credit River in Mississauga. The police told me she was gone. I believed them. Last Tuesday, a letter arrived at my house with her handwriting on the envelope. I know what my daughter's handwriting looks like. I spent 40 years looking at it. Birthday cards stuck to the fridge with magnets, grocery lists she'd leave on the counter when she stayed over, notes slipped under my bedroom door when she was a teenager and too stubborn to knock. I know every loop and slant of it. The way she wrote her capital R with a little extra curl at the bottom. The way her sevens always had a crossbar through the middle, like the Europeans do, even though she'd never been to Europe. The handwriting on that envelope was hers. My name was on the front. My address. The return address was a postal code in Thunder Bay, Ontario, a city 700 kilometers north of where I live. A city where I knew nobody and my daughter had never once mentioned. I stood at my mailbox for a long time. My neighbor was salting his walkway across the street. He waved at me. I didn't wave back. I couldn't move. My daughter's name was Renata. Is Renata. I still don't know which tense to use, and I've had 18 years to figure it out. She was 26 when she disappeared. November of 2006. She'd been going through something that autumn, something she wouldn't talk to me about. A relationship that had ended badly or was ending. I never got the full story. She'd seemed distant for weeks, quieter than usual when she came for Sunday dinners. I told myself it was just a rough patch. I told myself she'd come around. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. Her car was found at Arundel Park, driver's door unlocked, keys still in the ignition. Her coat was on the riverbank. Her phone was in the coat pocket, screen cracked, dead. There was no note anywhere. The OPP searched the river for 11 days. After that, they searched the banks downstream for another 2 weeks. They found nothing else. Missing persons. That was the official designation for another 4 years, until the coroner's inquest in 2010. The inquest concluded that the evidence was consistent with accidental drowning. Probable cause of death, November 2006. My daughter was declared legally dead. Her mother had already moved to Victoria by then. We'd separated 8 years before Renata disappeared, and the loss finished what the separation had started. We talked on the phone the night the inquest ruling came through. We both cried. We haven't spoken since. I kept Renata's number in my phone. I kept paying for the number through 3 different carriers for 18 years, $42 a month. I don't know why exactly. It felt like if I canceled it, something would be over that I wasn't ready to have be over. People thought that was strange. My brother told me once, gently, that I might want to think about talking to someone. I told him I was fine. I wasn't fine. I just didn't know what fine was supposed to feel like anymore. I kept her room too. Not a shrine, not exactly. I didn't vacuum seal it or anything dramatic like that. But I didn't change it either. Her books were still on the shelf. A half-finished tube of hand lotion sat on the dresser. A pair of her running shoes were by the closet door. 18 years of dust settling over everything, and I couldn't bring myself to move any of it. You don't get through something like that by healing. You get through it by learning how to carry it. Every morning you pick it back up and you carry it through another day. That's all there is. And then a letter arrives with your dead daughter's handwriting on the envelope, and you don't know what to do with your hands. I went inside. I sat down at the kitchen table. I looked at the envelope for probably 15 minutes before I opened it. My hands were shaking badly enough that I tore the top when I finally tried. Inside was a single page, folded in thirds. The same handwriting. I recognized the notepaper, a light blue, faint ruled lines. She'd used paper like that her whole life. I almost couldn't read it. My vision kept going blurry. Dad, I don't know how to start this. I don't fully understand what's happening to me. I'm in Thunder Bay. I've been for a while, I think, though I'm not sure how long exactly. I have a life here that I don't remember building. I have a name I don't remember choosing. I have a job. I have an apartment. People know me, and I don't know how they know me. But in the last few weeks, something has been coming back, and what's coming back is you. Our kitchen. Sunday dinners. The way you used to hum to yourself when you were doing the dishes. I don't know if I'm losing my mind, but I need you to know I'm here. Please don't call. Just come if you can. No return address on the letter itself, just the Thunder Bay postal code on the envelope. I read it 4 times. Then I folded it back up and put it in my breast pocket, close to my chest. I drove to the river that afternoon. I don't know why. I hadn't been back there since the year she disappeared. I parked where the police had told me her car was found, and I walked down to the bank, and I stood there, and I looked at the water. It was January. The river was mostly frozen at the edges, dark and slow in the middle. I stayed there for an hour. Then I went home and booked a flight to Thunder Bay for the following morning. I told my brother I was going to visit an old colleague. I didn't tell him the truth because I didn't know how to explain the truth. I wasn't sure I believed it myself. My daughter was declared dead by a coroner's inquest. The letter could be someone playing a terrible prank. It could be someone who'd found old letters of hers and learned to copy her handwriting. It could be grief doing something broken to my brain after 18 years. But I knew her handwriting. I knew every curl and slant of it. And I've been carrying that weight for too long to be able to walk away from the possibility, however small, however insane, that she was alive. I landed in Thunder Bay just after 10 in the morning. It was cold the way only a northern Ontario January can be cold, the kind that finds the gaps between your coat and your collar and gets into your bones. I'd booked a room at a hotel on the waterfront. I checked in and sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the postal code on the envelope and started trying to narrow it down. The postal code covered a section of the city's south end. I drove there in the rental car that afternoon. It was a neighborhood of older houses and low apartment buildings, streets that had been plowed but not completely cleared, snowbanks piled high at the curbs. Ordinary. Quiet, the kind of place where people live their lives without drawing attention. I didn't know what I was looking for. I drove slowly through the streets. I didn't find anything. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the dark and listened to the wind coming off Lake Superior, and I thought about the letter. And I thought about Renata. And I thought about all the Sundays I'd spent at a grave that might not be a grave. There is no grave, actually. There's a memorial marker at the cemetery near my house, but there's nothing under it. They never recovered her body. I requested the marker years later because I needed somewhere to go on her birthday, somewhere to bring flowers, somewhere to stand. I went back to the neighborhood the next morning. This time I parked and walked. It was early enough that most people weren't out yet. I went block by block. I wasn't sure what I expected to happen. What happened was that I stopped in front of a coffee shop on a corner and looked through the window. There was a woman behind the counter, dark hair pulled back. Early 40s in appearance. She had her back to me, reaching for something on a high shelf. She turned around. I've tried many times since then to describe what that felt like. I can't do it adequately. It wasn't her face exactly the way I remembered it. She was 18 years older. Her face had changed. There were lines I didn't recognize, but something in the structure of it. The way she held her head. The particular angle of her jaw when she glanced toward the window. I grabbed the doorframe. A woman walking past me on the sidewalk asked if I was all right. I said yes. I stayed where I was until I stopped shaking. Then I went inside. She was serving another customer. I went to the end of the counter and waited. She finished, turned, looked at me. She didn't react the way I expected. There was no shock of recognition. She just looked at me the way you look at a stranger who's next in line. Neutral. Polite. "What can I get for you?" she said. I couldn't speak for a moment. Her voice was different from how I remembered. A little lower. A different cadence. 18 years will do that. "Just a coffee," I said, black. She poured it. I paid. I stood there not moving. "Is there something else?" she asked. "Your name," I said. My voice came out strange, flattened. "What's your name?" She looked at me for a moment. Something shifted in her expression. Not recognition. More like unease. Like she'd been asked something she'd been expecting to be asked someday, and wasn't ready for it. Lynn, she said. Lynn Carteret. Not Renata. Not her last name, which was Vasconcelos. My name, the name I gave her. How long have you lived in Thunder Bay? I asked. The unease on her face deepened. Sir, is there something I can help you with? I'm sorry, I said. I apologize. You remind me of someone I lost a long time ago. She looked at me for another moment. Then she said, quietly, so the other people in the shop couldn't hear. You should come back at 4, when my shift ends. I walked around Thunder Bay for 5 hours. I sat in the park by the marina and watched the lake. I ate a sandwich I didn't taste at a diner on a side street. I checked the time every 20 minutes. At 4 o'clock, I was standing outside the coffee shop. She came out the back door in a winter coat, a bag on her shoulder. She saw me and stopped. Walk with me, she said. We walked 2 blocks without speaking. Then she turned into a small park, a few benches around a frozen pond. Nobody else around. Who do you think I am? She asked. Her voice was careful. I think you might be my daughter, I said. Her name was Renata. She disappeared in 2006. She was 26. I received a letter last week that I believe she wrote. My daughter's handwriting. A Thunder Bay postal code. No name, but it said to come. She sat down on a bench. She was quiet for a long time. I'd been having these. I don't know what to call them, she said finally. They started about 2 months ago. Not quite dreams because they happen when I'm awake too. I'll be standing in the middle of doing something ordinary and suddenly I'm somewhere else. A kitchen, a specific kitchen with yellow curtains and a window that looked onto a backyard with a birch tree. A man at the sink, humming. And I know the man. I know who he is, but I couldn't tell you his name or how I know him. She looked at me sideways. Our kitchen, she said slowly. You said our kitchen in the letter. I had to look away from her. I looked at the frozen pond. The curtains were yellow, I said. There's a birch tree in the backyard. I planted it the spring after Renata was born. I still hum when I do the dishes. I don't even notice I do it anymore. She pressed her hands together between her knees. I don't remember being your daughter, she said. I need to say that clearly. I have no memories of a life before Thunder Bay. I have fragments, images, feelings I can't explain, but nothing I could call memory. I've been Lynn Carteret for as long as I can account for. I have a rental apartment 3 blocks from here. I've worked at that coffee shop for 6 years. I have friends in this city. I have a life. I know, I said. Then why did you come? Because you wrote to me, I said. Because you told me to. She was quiet again for a long time. The light was going flat and gray, the way it does in the north in January, the sun dropping behind the tree line at 3:30. The letter, she said. I found it in my coat pocket 2 weeks ago. I don't remember writing it. I don't remember addressing the envelope. But I recognized my own handwriting and I recognized the impulse behind it. Something in me knew there was someone who needed to know. She paused. I found your address in an old phone book. A physical phone book. I don't know how I knew to look there or what name to look under. My name. She'd looked up my name without knowing whose name it was. I need to ask you something, I said. I know what you're going to ask. Will you let me arrange a DNA test? I said. I'll pay for everything. I'll take the sample myself if you'll let me, and I'll send it to a lab in Toronto. You'll have the result within a week. She looked at me a long time, her face in the fading light, the structure of it, the way she held herself on the bench. What if it's positive? She asked. What happens to me then? Do I have to become someone I don't remember being? Do I owe you something? Do I owe 18 years to a life I can't recall? You don't owe me anything, I said. I stopped being able to make claims on you a long time ago. The inquest said you were dead. Whatever you are to me privately, whatever I believe, legally and practically you've been someone else for a long time. I'm not here to take your life away from you. I'm here because the alternative was going to my grave not knowing. And I'm 63 years old and I don't have that many years left to go on not knowing. She turned away from me. She looked at the pond. My therapist here, she said. She's been trying to work through the amnesia with me for 4 years. She's told me that whatever happened, whatever the original event was, it was significant enough that my mind built a wall around it. She said forcing it isn't the answer, but she also said that the fragments coming through lately, the waking images, the letter I apparently wrote without knowing I was writing it, she said that might mean the wall is becoming something I've already decided to climb over. What do you want to do? I asked. She looked back at me. Something in her face had softened just slightly. Not recognition. Not yet. Something more tentative than that. Curiosity, maybe. Or the beginning of permission. Swab, she said. Fine, do the swab. I had the kit in my coat pocket. I'd brought it from Toronto, quietly hoping I'd need it, not letting myself fully believe I would. My hands were shaking again. She opened her mouth without being asked. I ran the swab along the inside of her cheek for 10 seconds. She sat perfectly still. I sealed the tube. I put it in the bag. How will you let me know? She asked. I gave her my phone number on a piece of paper. She looked at it for a moment, then put it in her pocket without saving it to her phone. I'm not asking you to feel anything, I said. I'm not asking you to remember. I'm just asking you to know the truth, whatever it is. She nodded once. Then she stood up and walked away through the park, and I watched her go, and I didn't call after her. I flew home the next day. I shipped the sample to a private genetics lab in Mississauga that a retired physician I know had recommended. The technician I spoke with told me 7 to 10 business days for a full kinship analysis. Father to biological child. She said she'd emailed the results. 7 of the worst days of my life, and I've had some bad ones. I barely slept. I barely ate. My brother called twice and I let it go to voicemail both times. I sat in the kitchen in the evenings with a cup of tea that went cold and looked at the birch tree in the backyard through the window and tried not to think about yellow curtains. On the 8th day, the email arrived. I was sitting at that same kitchen table. I heard the notification and I looked at my phone and I saw the subject line and I set the phone face down on the table and sat there for several minutes before I turned it back over. Kinship analysis. Vascon's the COS quadrat. Probability of first-degree biological relationship, 99.97%. Conclusion. Consistent with parent-child biological relationship. I'd put the phone down again. Outside the window, the birch tree was bare and white against the gray January sky. I planted it 63 days after Renata was born. I had been 30 years old. I remembered buying it at a nursery in Oakville, carrying it to the car in the back seat, planting it alone on a Saturday afternoon while her mother was inside with the baby. I remembered thinking, she'll grow up with this tree. They'll grow together. I called the number I'd given her. She answered on the 3rd ring. It's me, I said. Silence. The result came back, I said. More silence, then, and 99.97%, I said. Parent-child, you're my daughter. The silence on the line was very long this time. I heard her breathing. I heard what sounded, maybe, like she was trying to control her breathing. I don't know how to do this, she said finally. Neither do I said. I don't remember you, she said. Her voice was raw. I need you to understand that. I'm not going to suddenly remember you. Whatever broke in my memory, it's not going to unbreak just because of a percentage. I know, I said. Then what do we do? I looked at the birch tree. I don't know exactly. I thought we could start by talking. On the phone if that's easier. And then maybe you'd come down here sometime when you're ready. If you're ever ready. And I could show you the kitchen. The yellow curtains, the tree I planted the year you were born. Another long silence. The curtains, she said, and her voice had changed slightly, something uncertain in it. They're still yellow? Replaced them twice, I said. Always bought yellow. I don't know why. I never thought about why until right now. She didn't speak for a moment. Then she said, I'm gonna need time. I have time, I said. I'm going to need you to not push. I won't push. I'm still Lynn, she said. I need you to understand that. Whatever else this is, whatever the DNA says, I'm still Lynn, and I've been Lynn for 18 years, and that's not nothing. It's not nothing, I said. I'm not asking you to give that up. Lynn can have a father, that's allowed. I heard something then that might have been a small surprised exhale, not quite a laugh. But close. We talked for another hour. She told me about Thunder Bay, about the coffee shop, about a hiking trail along the lake she went to in the summers. I told her about the house, about my brother's family in Hamilton, about the memorial marker at the cemetery I'd been visiting twice a year. I told her I'd stopped going there now. She asked me how I'd felt, opening the letter. I told her. I didn't leave anything out. I'm sorry, she said. For 18 years. Not your fault, I said. Whatever happened that night, it wasn't your doing. We still don't know what happened. We've been trying to piece it together slowly, carefully, the way you'd handle something fragile. The working theory, drawn from old police reports I've requested, from the records of a small clinic in the north end of Thunder Bay, where a woman matching her description was treated for hypothermia and a head injury in December of 2006, 6 weeks after she disappeared, is that she survived the river. Somehow, in conditions that shouldn't have allowed it, she got out. She made her way north, though she has no memory of that journey. She arrived in Thunder Bay without identity, without history, without knowing her own name. The clinic treated her and released her to a social worker. She was given emergency supports, helped to access provincial ID, helped to start over from nothing. Nobody filed the missing persons check against her because she didn't know who she was. Nobody matched her to the search because the search was over. She fell through every gap there was to fall through and ended up, by some combination of survival and luck, and whatever mysterious navigation the mind performs when it has nothing else to work with, in a city 700 kilometers from where she started, building a life with nothing to build it from. She came to Mississauga in April. She drove, which I thought was brave. I offered to book her a flight, but she said she wanted to drive. She wanted the time to think. She pulled into my driveway on a Saturday afternoon. I was watching from the front window. I didn't go out right away. I gave her a moment to sit in the car, which she did for several minutes. When she got out, she stood on the driveway and looked at the house. I opened the front door and stood on the step. We looked at each other from about 20 feet apart. She was wearing a blue winter coat. Her hair was down. She looked nothing like the 26-year-old in the photographs I'd kept. She looked exactly like someone who had lived a full life and carried it in her face. She walked up the path. She stopped a few feet from me. The birch trees out back, I said. My voice didn't really work. I know, she said. I can see the top of it over the roof. We stood there a moment longer. Then she stepped forward and put her arms around me. Not the way a daughter who remembers her father hugs him. Something more tentative, more careful. But she held on, and I put my arms around her and held on too, and I didn't let myself make a sound even though everything in me was breaking apart and putting itself back together at the same time. She pulled back after a moment, looked at my face with those eyes I'd looked at in photographs for 18 years. Show me the kitchen, she said. I held the door open for her. She walked in ahead of me. She stopped just inside the kitchen doorway. She stood very still, looking at the yellow curtains, at the window, at the birch tree visible through the glass. She didn't say anything for a long time. Then she reached out and touched the curtain with just her fingertips. I remember this, she said quietly. It wasn't joy exactly. It was something more like vertigo, like recognizing a place and a dream. I don't know how, but I remember this. I turned toward the sink because I needed a moment she couldn't see. I turned on the water, and I stood there. And then, without thinking about it, without noticing I was doing it at all, I started to hum. I heard her make a sound behind me, just a small sound, a caught breath. That, she whispered. That's what I've been hearing. I turned off the water. I turned around. She was standing in the middle of the kitchen with tears running down her face, and for the first time since she'd walked through my door, she looked at me not like a stranger she was willing to try for, but like someone she knew, someone who had always been the person standing at the sink, humming, with their back to the room. We didn't have the 18 years. We will never have the 18 years, but we had that kitchen, and the birch tree through the window, and a Saturday afternoon in April that neither of us will ever stop carrying. That's more than I ever thought I'd get. I planted that birch tree 38 years ago with dirt on my knees and no idea what kind of man I'd have to become to tend it alone for half my life. There's something I've thought about a lot in the months since Renata drove up that driveway. Not the miracle of it, not the impossibility. I leave those words to other people. What I keep coming back to is simpler than that. It's the question of what holds. What actually holds when everything else falls away. I held the phone number for 18 years. $42 a month to a carrier who probably flagged my account as an anomaly. I held the yellow curtains, replaced twice but always yellow. I held the Sunday habit of visiting a marker with nothing beneath it. People around me, kind people who loved me, gently suggested over the years that holding on like that was a way of not living. I never had a good answer for them. I just knew I couldn't let go of what felt true, even when every official document said otherwise. I think now that was its own kind of intelligence. Not stubbornness, not denial. Something more careful than that. The willingness to keep asking a question the world has already answered for you because something in you hasn't finished thinking it through. I'm not a man who uses words like intuition easily. I'm 63, I'm from Mississauga, I worked in civil engineering for 35 years, but I'll say this. There is a kind of clear-eyed attention that keeps you oriented toward what matters. And I had enough of it to stay pointed in the right direction, even when I had nothing to point toward. What Renata had was something harder. She built a life, a real one, with real friendships and real routines and real grief of her own, the grief of not knowing who she was, out of nothing, out of a hospital bed and a social worker and a name she chose because she had no other one. That takes a kind of daily courage that I think people underestimate because it doesn't look like courage from the outside. It looks like just getting on with it. But there's no just about rebuilding yourself from the ground up, day after day, without the foundation everyone else takes for granted. She did that. She kept going when she had every reason not to. And the letter. I think about the letter a lot. She doesn't remember writing it. Her hand wrote my name and my address, and the words, "Please come," without her conscious mind knowing it was doing it. I don't have a clinical explanation for that, and I'm not going to pretend I do. What I know is that somewhere in her, under 18 years of a different life, there was something that knew the right thing to do. It found a way to do the right thing even through the wall her mind had built around it. That matters to me. That says something about who she is underneath everything that happened to her. The three of us, me, her, and whoever she was going to be before the river. We didn't get the life we were supposed to have. We got this one instead. A Saturday in April. Yellow curtains. A man at a sink, humming without knowing he was humming, and a woman standing behind him hearing something she'd been hearing in fragments for 2 months finally makes sense. You don't get to choose what you carry, but you get to choose whether you keep carrying it honestly, whether you keep your eyes open, whether you stay the kind of person your daughter can find her way back to. That's the only thing I know for certain that I did right. I stayed. I kept the curtains yellow. I kept humming. It turned out that was enough.